Does a degree in engineering from Lehigh University. He did a fellowship and a residency at the NIH at the National Institute for Allergy and Infectious Disease. And he came back to Rutgers University, where he got his medical degree, and was for 25 years the director of allergy and immunology at New Jersey Medical School. Currently, he's on the faculty of Kean University and directs the Center for Aerobiological Research. He's been in many leadership positions with the American Academy of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology. He does pollen counts here in New Jersey, I think for quite some time. The only center in New Jersey doing that, so when you see pollen counts for New Jersey, it's coming from Dr. Bielory's lab. He has a long-standing interest in not only allergy and immunology, but the interaction between pollen and air pollution. And he's been a long-standing member of the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Clean Air Committee, Clean Air Council, excuse me. And he's also done work conducting research with investigators at EOC on the interaction between climate and allergy and immunology. So it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Bielory.
Thank you. Testing, 1, 2, 3, you got it? Testing, I've just made sure they want to be recording it. My wife says I'm not that quiet, so I don't know why I need to be recorded. Thank you very much. It's to be invited. Normally I would be on the Appalachian Trail today. Today was my day to go hiking in the fall foliage, and but I'm here to hopefully enlighten you. Hearing some of the materials going on here, I'm very big into education, especially in schools. Someone mentioned about, I think, going to the schools. In the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, they have something called the Citizen Science Ambassadors. And we can talk about that maybe at the very end, because at this point in time, I am looking to write a grant that will be placing pollen counting stations in schools as a science project. You know, the STEM programs, and I don't call them STEM, I call them STEAM. Why? Because it's not just science, technology, engineering, and math, but it's also the arts, journalism. How do you project the information to the general population? So along those lines, I've been asked in a brief overview of the impact, quote unquote, of pollen, health, and climate. So looking toward that, I mean, it could be quite extensive, but it was a big focus today to look at indoor air quality. When it comes to indoor air quality, there is limited information of the interaction of climate, except if you look in this building, so to speak, the only way to get the windows open is with a brick. They're all sealed. And it's an interesting evolution. Where I grew up on a chicken farm in central Jersey, you open a window, we have wooden windows, you slide open, you let the pollen come in, so what? And interesting enough, if you look at the hygiene hypothesis, those who grew up on chicken farms or in what we'll call the rural areas have less allergies than the ones that grow up regretfully, in EJ communities, in the environmental, because of other issues of interaction between pollutants. And the pollutants, I will say right up front, act as an adjuvant, makes the immune system more primed to become allergic once you're exposed to a pollen. And let me give you a little basic immunology. You're not allergic to sugars. You're not allergic to fats. If you are, anybody here will clone you and will make a mint. You are allergic, or you develop a good immune response to proteins. So that is the number one item. Can there be items that you have sugar? Yes, there is a meat protein called alpha-gal. There's even, everybody in this room has an immunological response to a sugar. What is that sugar? Your blood type. Your blood type is defined by certain sugar moieties on the surface of red blood cells. But looking at the complex environment, they call the global, it's climate change, because in some places it's going to warm, some places it's going to get cold. It's not really just warming. It's an interaction. Things are changing. We're going to be focusing perhaps a little bit more on molds, allergens, where we have a cap, indoor pollutants as well. But there's as you can see, there's an incredible expanse of various factors, and it's hard to tease out which ones are more important than the others, or which ones are the cofactors that you need to be concerned about. So, outline. Pollen. Allergies out in indoor and outdoor, because regretfully, your indoor air quality is dependent upon the air filtration system. Outdoor allergenic pollen, which is protein. Now, why are you allergic to pollen? Does it do any problems? You know, why is ragweed? Why is there something? And if you go back to evolution of man, so to speak, your immune system really evolved in the jungle. And where your immune system for allergy was really anti-parasitic. And interesting enough, the study has shown that if you have a parasitic infection, you don't have much allergies. I treat the parasitic infection with anti-parasitic materials, your allergies go up. Meaning your immune system is either going to fight A or B. If you don't have enough soldiers to fight A, your focus will be changed. So in that regards, these studies were done in Africa, for example, where people are exposed to dust and a lot of other allergenic material, but when they have parasitic infections, their immune response is less allergic, it's more anti-infective. The annual treatment for allergic rhinitis, it's billions of dollars. Billions of dollars. Just in one product alone, people may have not realized when the antihistamines were prescription, the drug that you use now is loratadine, Claritin, whatever it is. The drug before that was Seldane, $1.2 billion just on the drug for a prescription. It's now go over the counter. Seldane had some cardiovascular markers and said, we got to stop. In came loratadine within 3 months of approval and took over the market, and it was a gangbuster, but now that's over the counter. And I sit on FDA advisory groups or consulting groups to bring products over the counter to make it more common to the general population. As the pollen increases, so do allergic diseases. It is directly related. Some people will have an allergic response to 10 grains of pollen in this air right now, but some who are allergic to whatever it is, what's called cat dander. By the way, we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. And another person will not have reaction, even though it's a skin test, they're both positive for cat dander. But one will be sneezing now, another one will have nothing. Because there's the individual personalized medicine is what is their level of tolerance or non-tolerance to the foreign protein. The increased allergenic sales associated with peaks of pollen. Literally, we did a study just looking at internet searches, and obviously in that regards, people search, and you will find that. And by the way, that's how marketing occurs. Why is there more marketing now for certain drugs and not others? I mean, why is RSV being marketed now? Okay, it was just approved, the vaccine, but nonetheless, we're entering the flu season. We're entering season. So seasonal marketing is there, and when people start clicking on the internet, Google search, you can do Google Analytics and actually find certain information. Seasonal allergic rhinitis. How many people have allergies? Raise your hand. It looks more than 20%. Now, how is that possible? Well, when this study was done, it was about 10 to 20%. And the recent studies now bring it up to about 40%, which was about what we had here. Of self-reporting. Does that mean every one of you are truly allergic, or you had a perception of you have allergies? It's a different question, but it's going to be above 20% and maybe less than 40%. Now, in the United States, we have 330 million individuals. So if you talk about 10%, okay, 30 million. 20%, 60 million. We're talking about almost 100 million people having some type of an allergic response or immune response to a protein. And going back to the point of why am I allergic to a protein in the first place, or why am I allergic to pollen, which is innocuous. Pollen is nothing more than the male reproductive component of a plant. That's all it does. It floats in the air, and you have wind-borne and you have insect-borne pollen. What's insect-borne pollen? Those are the flowers. No one's allergic to flowers. Anybody who thinks you would have to snort them. I know some, your wife, you gave it to you. Yeah, it's okay, I get it. But the point is, if you're going to do that, add more pollen. No. By the way, is this being recorded? I will deny that. the scenario is that, quote unquote, the amount, it's airborne, and it is anemophilous. It pervades, and that's why it's very important to talk about air quality, because you don't see CO2. You're going to hear talk about CO2. You don't see ozone. You don't see these other items, but they act as adjuvants to pollen, which is a protein. All the other things you're going to hear about are not proteins, but they are involved in the immune system to stimulate it, and by being stimulated, it primes it to become allergic. Okay, so outdoor allergens exacerbate, we know that, whether it's asthma or chronic obstructive disease. 25 million states already have asthma. And if you look at the numbers, when you say people have allergies, now I said, how many people here, I understand HIPAA, we're not taking your names down. How many people have asthma? 1, 2. So you had 40% of the, but only about 10, it's less than 10%. It's a minor population that actually have a subset of reversible obstructive airway disease. It's not everybody. Think that 8% of asthmatics don't wheeze, they cough, meaning it is an expulsion process where they get obstructed in that regard. Here, actually, I'm just going to highlight the pollen grains on the left. It's done under a microscope. We are now doing research of artificial intelligence. Taking a slide and had the quote, a computer do the pollen counts, because for me to do the pollen count every day, it's about an hour of my time to 2 hours. So it's a time-consuming, it's almost like hieroglyphics. It's a very ancient, so we're looking at semi-automated and automated techniques at this point in time, while at the same time, we developed the pollen underground, which is schools and individuals to participate in giving their pollen counts, and we're looking at, if somebody's interested in looking at schools, I'll be help you work with you and give you little devices to start that program.
That's a citizen science project?
It's based on it is based on it, but it's not funded as a citizen science, but I have it as, that's the structure of it, where, quote unquote, I get clubs. There's one in, there's a school in Bloomfield that's interested, and one in White House Station. I was here for a 4-H meeting here at Rutgers, and many of the schools came in for that, and there's very big interest. It was right before COVID, so after COVID hit, things went flat. And now I'm just starting to re-engage, so to speak. Now, let's see if this works. Biological agents. There's difference between causing asthma to develop, like there's only a few here, versus causing an exacerbation, making this person who is already asthmatic, making them worse, having a problem. Let's see if this works. Notice the animation. The idea is that things come in from the outside, float, goes in throughout. Now this window is actually, you can open, not with a brick. But the scenario is that, what is the most common sources of allergen on the indoor? Well, with COVID, there were more people going to Petco than anywhere else. They were adopting pets. The most common pet that's been adopted, or that is in the United States is? Anybody say, how many say dog? Raise your hand. How many say cats? Raise your hand. How many say your spouse? That's a non-gender. I want to make sure we get selected here. But it is the dog. The dog, what did I tell you? What are you allergic to? Are you allergic to the fur? To protein. Protein. Where's the protein? The cat licks its skin, the fur all the time. The dog drools. It is the protein in saliva. And the other proteins that one is going to be allergic to in these items is on the floor. There's little footprints over here. Those footprints, I've got it wonderful here. Here we go. Little footprints for the dog. Well, those footprints could also be cockroach or mice, because they're allergens from that. The other lovely item is, quote unquote, this little sucker over here. So we're trying to get to the pointer. This is the dust mite. Dust mites love to live in moisture. So as climate change is occurring, areas are getting more humidity. Your changes in humidity are occurring. Dust mites go up. That's why National Jewish in Denver was the asthma center, or actually the TB center as well. But the scenario is that, why was it stationed in Denver? Because it's 1 mile up, mile-high city in the United States. Humidity is low. Dust mites are almost non-existent. The reason why you want a tuberculosis center is oxygenation, the PO2. So there's a very good reason where this hospital for respiratory diseases was stationed. But if you look at the items, again, it's the protein from these items that you're looking for, whether it's mold on the wall coming from the upper portion up here, up here, the mold is releasing. Now, mold can release allergen, a protein, but it can also, where's Howard? There he is. Or it can release volatile organic chemicals, meaning the non-allergenic. He's going to talk on CO2, which is a very important feature. So you got to understand the variety of what is allergic. You know, people say, I'm allergic to mold. There's mold in this room. There's mold blowing on you right now. The question is it significant? If you didn't have an immune system, okay, we would have a problem. So asthma development, suspicion, evidence for causal, clearly the dust mite is number one. Evidence of association, limited set, cockroach, and even the virus. The RSV in children, we're talking about kids, if you get an RSV baby, it prones the baby to develop asthma downstream. It will increase the likelihood that they will become more sensitized. It's a very important feature that in an inflammatory infectious process, whether it's inflammatory from pollutants or inflammatory from an infectious disease point of view, you can develop a priming organism, a priming foundation for an allergic response or allergic airway disease in general. Asthma exacerbation definitively has a causal relationship. That's for development. This is for exacerbation. Cockroach, house dust mite, they all do it. The cat dander, as I said, it's cat dander, even though dogs are more common. But dogs, for some reason, are more outdoors. Cats are always indoors. And if you had a cat in here, this rug would have the allergenic protein for 7 years, even after you remove the cat. So the protein remains under the schmutz that you have in the rug. Dog, sufficient for an association. Fungus, again. Rhinovirus. People should also realize that, and I think there's a talk this afternoon on COVID, or was it already? I can't remember seeing it. So the point there is that COVID is a virus. And the first time that virus appeared in the United States was not now, was in 1960. The first out of 5 COVID coronaviruses, of which now the COVID we have now is an issue of mortality. The MERS, Middle Eastern one, a second cousin, but there are 3 others, several others that were quote unquote in the United States, but it wasn't here till the 1960s. But they act as an adjuvant to quote unquote an immune, stimulate the inflammatory response in that regards. Oops, let's go back. So let's focus on house dust mites for 1 minute. And I know I have to watch the time, that's all. Again, house dust mites, climate change, with humidity and temperature, they live in humidity. So as I said, in national, but here, in this room, it's actually not dry. So there will be a dust mite. Where is the highest density of dust mite in the home? Where?
Bedroom?
Speak up. The bed. Bed sheets. How about the living room? Anybody want to say? How about it? It is in the bedroom. Now, the house dust mite. This is not. Maybe should be spread. We should cut this from the motion picture here. But the house dust mite is an insect. It's an arthropod. And what I said you're allergic to? Protein, right? Well, you're not allergic to the house dust mite, but what comes out of its butt. I know it's just a lovely idea, but when you go to bed, you shed billions of dead cells. Those cells are the basics of its diet. It's that there, in New Jersey now, cannabis is getting legal, so the dust mite smokes, sits on his back, smokes a joint, and eats a couple more dead cells and produces more fecal material, which you're allergic to. So the climate change, blame it on cannabis. House dust mite growth, you get more growth, more allergen. You can control systems for indoor environments. There are ways to control the amount. Obviously humidity, but it's not that easy in an environmental justice community that doesn't have. Schools, I get all the time, we're fighting to put air conditioning units, just simple filtration units. HDM exposure. Yeah, here's another important point about allergies. When your mother moves into your mother-in-law, not your mother, your mother-in-law moves in, you get a response to her in about 3 to 5 days. Is that an allergic response? You're being sensitized. But it takes about a year for it. That's why infants are not born allergic. A baby is not born allergic. They do have to have their immune system evolve to be sensitized first. That's why, you know, oh, boy, I'm really going to have to destroy this film. When you move to Washington, D.C. as a politician, you, quote unquote, you have to become sensitized to the environment. It takes one whole season to get a full appreciation what goes on there. It's in the second season so in the second year of life of a child is when allergies start to kick in. Not the first week, oh, allergic to milk. Nonsense. The only thing that transfers across the placenta is a different type of antibody called IgG, not IgE. I'm not going to give a full immune discussion, but IgE does not cross. The IgG from the mother crosses and protects the baby for 6 months, of which at 6 months infections increase. HDM sensitization because you need an allergen exposure and then you get it. But it's not in a week, it takes time. 3 months, 6 months. Usually, like I say, pollen. The pollen that you're exposed this year, if you're not exposed to next year, or you were born in now, you're not going to be sensitized to tree pollen, because tree pollen in New Jersey is March, April, and May. So you're going to that child won't become sensitized to or sensitive to tree pollen until 2 years of age, because it will need to go through a season of exposure to the protein. So the point is, urbanization, lifestyle, air pollution, helminthic infections, I kind of touched about that. There is just a genetic predisposition of developing. If one person has a parent that is allergic to something, they have a 30% chance that a child will have it. Both parents, 60 or 80% that the child will have it. The father has eczema to corn. The mother has hives to cats. The child can have asthma to ragweed. They don't inherit the specific disease state. They don't inherit the specific allergen sensitivity. They inherit the propensity to develop it. And if you have exposure to the indoor air quality, certain or outdoor pollution, adjuvant, it increases that sensitization process and rate. Let's see. Recent shifts, I think more frost free. I participated in this study. In Texas, the ragweed season starts and stops. It hasn't really changed much, even with quote-unquote climate change. But if you move from Texas and you go to Canada, straight line north, the beginning and the end start to spread. It starts earlier, ends later. And it has to do with frost-free days. Because as soon as the frost comes out here, ragweed pollen, which is out now, will stop. Ragweed will stop to produce its pollen-producing capability. And what we found, and it's published with Lou Ziska, who's at now Columbia, we collaborated when he was at the USDA, but he was poorly funded and therefore left to do more research. Can result in seasonality, quantity of pollen produced. Clearly, there's a difference in how much pollen. The more CO2, which I guess you're going to talk about, the more CO2 that you put a plant like ragweed to, I didn't even put those pictures in, or maybe I did, I don't remember. No, I don't, not in this slide. The bigger the ragweed plants, and the more pollen it produces. The same thing occurs with poison ivy. The higher the CO2 concentration, the more the poison ivy oil the plant grows and produces more of the allergen. So CO2 is a key, especially in plant-based aerobiological or plant-based allergen generation. Oh, this is
So that is soil or air?
Huh?
Soil or air?
What do you mean by soil?
You have more CO2 in the air, or it has to be in the soil?
Okay, there's a question about CO2 in the air and soil. Do you know talk about soil, and when you see a tree, or do you know what cassava is? Anybody know?
Yeah.
You know, how important is cassava to the world? Nobody knows, right? It's the third most common foodstuff, meaning it's, and if you raise the CO2, the plant grows bigger, the tubers grow smaller, the food component of the tubers grow smaller, so the food supply shrinks. So it's an interesting observation. So is it CO2 in the soil? No, it's CO2 in the air, really. It has more of it, has the growth pattern on the impact on the plant. I think the idea is that, sinusitis, conjunctivitis, any mucosal surface, the immune system, allergies are, quote, the interaction between you and the environment. And, you'll hear, indoor air quality, or certain other things, but what's an allergic response is that it has a memory that it, quote, it will have programmed itself to produce immune antibodies or cells that will neutralize them. Now, I use this as an example. Every time I get shot, I bleed. Am I allergic to bullets? It's reproducible, but it's not an immune response, it's a mechanical one. There have been changes in the growing season. From 1990 to 2006, we're now I'm working with a group in Penn State. We're showing the shift of the U.S., the growing seasons. That has another component of parabiological change. Here's the CO2 and temperature in ragweed and city in Baltimore that would, quote unquote, changes the volume. Now, everybody thinks that, if I live out in the rural sections of the world, therefore I will have more allergen to ragweed. That's what ragweed grows. But ragweed grows in disturbed soils. And actually, ragweed grew bigger out in Baltimore than it did outside Baltimore. It produced more pollen. So therefore, it's not just, quote unquote, disturbed soil, it's the environment of which it's located in. We talked about the one day. This is a specific study. 1 day change down in Texas, 3 weeks as you hit Canada. It started earlier, ended later. Published in Proceedings, National Academy of Sciences. Actually, while I was more at Rutgers, I was part of the EPA grant at Rutgers for this publication. So, bottom line, in the few minutes I have left, to try to give you information about allergy and indoor, changing it to knowledge. Just talking to you to give you information, we have to now incorporate it into our heads and how you're going to use it. And then how the use is utilization. Whether some young lady left, but the idea is bringing it to the school system. That would be a nice idea. Because they're the future, they're the voters. They're the millennials. And boy, some of the millennials, we don't want them voting, but that's besides the point. And then getting to the outcomes. So, when you have this, what are we going to do? What, from this meeting that actually I've been by, Dr. Kippen, Bob Lumbuck, who's actually on the Clean Air Council, just got appointed as well to New Jersey. What is it, how are we going to change the outcomes for this whole process? So with that, I'll leave that as a conclusion and give some time for some discussion.